The royal decree was signed in blood 3 moons ago. Alpha Theodosius Blackthorn of the Northern Shadowcrest pack bound himself by blood oath to Lady Rosalind Ashford, daughter of the High Council, Semstone of the royal bloodline, Luna chosen by pack law itself. The entire kingdom witnessed their union under the wolf moon. Every pack from the Crimson Highlands to the Frost March sent representatives. The heir to the throne would come from this blessed union, they said. The prophecy would be fulfilled, they promised. But tonight, in the grand hall of Shadowcrest Manor, that same heir, a boy of barely 3 winters, with his father's storm-gray eyes and his mother's silver-blonde hair, has crawled across the marble floor, past his mother's silk skirts, past the royal guard, past every tradition and law written in the ancient texts, and climbed into the lap of a kitchen omega named Elspeth Thornfield. And he called her mother. The silence that follows is the kind that shatters kingdoms. Before we go any further into this forbidden tale of bloodlines torn and hearts broken, I need to know. Tell me the city you're watching from so I can send you a hug, because what's about to unfold will leave you breathless. Lady Rosalind Ashford Blackthorn stands frozen, her hand still extended from where she'd been reaching for her son. Her face, porcelain perfect, framed by hair that costs more to maintain than most pack members earn in a year, has gone absolutely white. Not pale. The kind of white that comes before fury or heartbreak. And right now, standing in front of 47 visiting pack alphas and their entourages, it's impossible to tell which will win. Edmund, she says, and her voice carries that particular pitch that every wolf in the room recognizes. It's the sound of an alpha female whose authority has just been challenged. Edmund Blackthorn, come to mother this instant. The boy, Edmund, the future alpha of Shadowcrest, the child prophesied to unite the packs, doesn't move. Instead, he burrows deeper into Elspeth's worn grey dress, his small fists clutching the coarse fabric like it's the only solid thing in a tilting world. Elspeth herself looks utterly terrified. She's 24, though she looks younger, with hair the color of autumn wheat that she keeps tied back in a simple braid. Her dress marks her rank. No Omega wears colors in the Northern Territories, only shades of gray and brown, as dictated by pack law for the past 3 centuries. She's holding perfectly still, as if hoping that somehow if she doesn't move, doesn't breathe, doesn't acknowledge what's happening, it might all reverse itself. It won't. Alpha Theodosius enters the hall at precisely the wrong moment, which is to say, the only moment that could make this worse. He's tall. They always describe alphas as tall, but Theodosius is genuinely imposing, 6'4" of contained power and ancient authority. His dark hair is silver-threaded at the temples despite only 32 winters, a mark of early ascension to alpha status. He carries himself like a man who's never questioned his right to command, because he hasn't, not once in his entire life. He takes in the scene with those storm-gray eyes. His wife rigid with fury. His son clinging to a kitchen omega, and 47 visiting alphas watching to see how he'll handle this breach of every social contract written since the first howling. "What," he says quietly, "is happening in my hall?" Lady Rosalind turns to him, and there are tears now, actual tears streaming down her perfect face, and somehow they make her look more frightening, not less. "Your son," she says, and the emphasis on your cuts like silver through the air, "has just rejected me in front of the entire Northern Council. He crawled away from me and called that Omega his mother." The way she says, "that Omega," makes several wolves in the room wince. It's not just dismissive, it's utterly contemptuous, the verbal equivalent of stepping on something unpleasant. Theodosius's gaze shifts to Elspeth. She's still frozen, still holding perfectly still, but now her arms have moved. A protective circle around Edmund, completely instinctive, the way any mother might shield a frightened child. Any mother. The room notices this at exactly the same moment Theodosius does. "Omega," he says, and his voice could freeze fire. "Release my son." Elspeth's hands move to comply. They're trained to comply. Every Omega in every pack across every territory learns to obey an alpha's direct command before they learn their own names. But Edmund whimpers, a small sound of distress, and her hands stop. They just stop. Every wolf in that hall feels the shockwave of what this means. An Omega has just hesitated to obey a direct command from her pack Alpha. In the Northern Territories, this is grounds for exile. In some of the older packs, it's grounds for execution. I said release him. Theodosius hasn't raised his voice, but the command weight behind it makes the chandeliers rattle. Elspeth's hands are shaking now. You can see her trying to obey, see her fighting against every instinct she has, but Edmund has wrapped himself around her like a vine around an oak, and when she tries to move him, he starts crying. Not the manipulative crying of a child testing boundaries, but the genuine, heartbroken sobbing of a child losing his anchor in a terrifying world. "Mama!" he sobs into her dress. "Mama, don't go. Please don't go." Lady Rosalind makes a sound somewhere between a gasp and a shriek. "How dare you?" she hisses at Elspeth. "How dare you teach him that word? How dare you poison my son against his own mother, you? My lady, I never." Elspeth finally speaks, and her voice is rough from disuse. Omegas in the northern packs are taught to be silent unless directly addressed. "I swear on my bloodline I never taught him anything. I never presumed. Then why does he run to you?" Rosalind is shaking now, her carefully maintained composure cracking like ice in spring. "Why does my son, the heir to the greatest pack in the Northern Territories, prefer a kitchen Omega to his own mother? What have you done to him?" It's Lord Cedric Ashford, Rosalind's father and head of the High Council, who speaks next. He's 70 winters old, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, and when he speaks, even alphas listen. "This," he says quietly, "is a violation of pack law. Omega Thornfield, you will present yourself for questioning before the council at dawn. Alpha Theodosius, you will ensure your household is in proper order before the gathering concludes. And Lady Rosalind." He looks at his daughter with something complicated in his ancient eyes. "Compose yourself. You are a Luna, not a merchant's wife squabbling over market goods." The rebuke lands like a blow. Rosalind's face flushes scarlet, but she draws herself up, every inch the royal lady again. "Father," she says tightly, "this Omega has overstepped bounds that." "Dawn," Lord Cedric repeats. "We will discuss this at dawn. Theodosius, clear your hall." It's not a request. Alpha Theodosius nods once, sharp and controlled, then raises his voice to address the assembled packs. "The evening's gathering is concluded. Return to your quarters. We convene for the formal gathering at mid-morning tomorrow." The visitors file out in carefully maintained silence, but every single one of them is memorizing every detail of what they've witnessed, because this story will spread across the territories like wildfire through dry grass. By dawn tomorrow, every pack from the southern marshes to the eastern rockfall will have heard about the heir who called an Omega mother. When the hall finally empties, guards, servants, visitors all dismissed, only 5 wolves remain: Theodosius, Rosalind, Lord Cedric, Elspeth and Edmund. "Stand," Theodosius tells Elspeth. She manages to get to her feet, though Edmund clings to her still, his face buried in her shoulder now. She's taller than she seemed when sitting, 5'7" perhaps, slender in the way of wolves who work hard and eat last. There's nothing remarkable about her at first glance. Brown eyes, plain features, that weak-colored hair. She looks like 1,000 other pack Omegas across 1,000 other territories. But Edmund clings to her like she's the only solid thing in his universe. "How long?" Rosalind asks, and her voice has gone cold now, icy with betrayal. "How long has this been happening?" "My lady, nothing has happened," Elspeth says desperately. "I work in the kitchens. Sometimes the young lord wanders down from the nursery wing, and I give him bits of bread and honey and She stops, seeming to realize how damning her words sound. "I thought it was permitted. The head of household never said." "The head of household," Rosalind interrupts, "never imagined she would need to explicitly forbid kitchen staff from turning my son against me." "I didn't," Elspeth insists, and there's steel underneath the fear now, the kind of desperate courage that comes when someone has absolutely nothing left to lose. I swear on the moon herself, I never spoke against you, my lady. I never. Edmund asks questions sometimes about where food comes from, and I answer him, and he likes to watch me knead bread dough, and I. Her voice cracks. I only ever tried to be kind to him. Kind, Rosalind repeats flatly. You were kind to him. And in return for your kindness, my son has decided that an Omega is a more suitable mother than his actual Luna-born parent. Lord Cedric raises a hand. Enough. Rosalind, go to your chambers. Theodosius, we need to speak privately. Omega, you will be escorted to the holding quarters until your council hearing at dawn. No. Edmund's voice cuts through the hall, high and frightened. No, you can't take Mama Ellie. You can't. Mama Ellie. The nickname lands like a stone into still water, and the ripples are devastating. Theodosius closes his eyes briefly, a crack in his alpha composure. When he opens them again, he's looking at Elspeth with something complicated in his expression. Not quite anger, not quite confusion, something deeper and more troubling. How long have you been watching my son? He asks quietly. 6 months, Alpha, Elspeth whispers. Since the former nursemaid was dismissed. The new one, she's very proper, very correct, but Edmund would cry at night, and the Luna ordered that he must learn to self-soothe, and I could hear him from the kitchen courtyard, and She stops herself, but too late. The damage is done. You went to my son's nursery at night, Theodosius says, still in that dangerously quiet voice. Without permission. Without authorization. You entered the private family wing of this manor and interacted with the heir to this pack. He was crying, Elspeth says helplessly. He was 3 years old and crying in the dark, and nobody came, and I thought. You thought you knew better than his Luna mother how to raise him, Rosalind says, and her voice is pure poison now. You, an Omega with no children, no mate, no status whatsoever, decided that you understood my son's needs better than I do. No, my lady, I never. Then what? Rosalind screams, and it's her wolf speaking now, the Luna who has just been challenged in the worst possible way. What gives you the right to be the person my son runs to? What gives you the right to hear him call you mother when I carried him and birthed him, and have given him everything a child could possibly? Her voice breaks on a sob, and suddenly she's not a fearsome Luna anymore, just a woman whose child loves someone else more than her. The silence that follows is absolutely brutal. Lord Cedric is the one who breaks it. Omega Thornfield, you are confined to quarters pending council review. Guards will escort you. Theodosius, separate the child. No! Edmund screams, clinging so hard to Elspeth that his small hands are white-knuckled. No! Papa, please don't let them take her. Please! Theodosius approaches slowly, carefully, the way you'd approach a wounded animal. When he reaches them, he crouches down to be at his son's eye level. Edmund, he says quietly. Son, look at me. Edmund turns his face just enough to meet his father's eyes, though he doesn't loosen his grip on Elspeth. You need to let go now, Theodosius says gently. Elspeth needs to go with the guards, and you need to go with your mother. She's not my mother, Edmund says, and the childish certainty in his voice is absolutely devastating. Mama Rosalind lives here, but she's not my mother. Mama Ellie is my mother. You can actually hear Rosalind's heart break. It's not metaphorical. There's a sound she makes, a wounded keen that every wolf in the room feels in their bones. Edmund. Theodosius tries again, and there's strain in his voice now. Your mother is Lady Rosalind. She never comes when I cry, Edmund says, and there's no accusation in his voice, just statement of fact. She never holds me when I'm scared. She smells like flowers, but they're cold flowers, and when I touch her she tells me not to wrinkle her dress. Mama Ellie smells like bread and warm things, and when I'm scared she holds me and sings the song about the moon and the wolf who found his way home. Every word is a knife. Every word is true. Every word is absolutely destroying Lady Rosalind where she stands. Get him off her, Rosalind says hoarsely. Theodosius, use Alpha command. Get our son away from that Omega now. Theodosius stands slowly. He could use command. Every Alpha can compel obedience from their pack, especially from Omegas, especially from children. The command voice bypasses conscious thought and speaks directly to the wolf inside. And Edmund would obey because his wolf would have no choice. But using Alpha command on a 3-year-old child is something you don't come back from. It's trauma that shapes a wolf for life. It's the kind of thing that turns trust into fear, and fear into the sort of damage that no amount of healing can ever fully repair. You can see Theodosius calculating this. See him weighing his son's future against his Luna's pride, against pack law, against everything he's ever been taught about command and obedience and proper hierarchy. Edmund, he says instead, without command, just quiet Alpha authority. I give you my word, Elspeth will not be harmed. But you must go with your mother now. Edmund searches his father's face with those storm-gray eyes, so like Theodosius's own. Promise, he whispers. Promise Mama Ellie will be safe. I promise, Theodosius says, and you can hear the weight of a blood oath in those words, even though he hasn't actually sworn one. Slowly, reluctantly, Edmund loosens his grip. Elspeth helps him down from her lap, her hands shaking. Her face wet with tears she hasn't allowed herself to shed until now. Be brave, little lord, she whispers to him. Be strong like your papa. Will you sing to me tonight? Edmund asks, and it's such a small, hopeful question that it breaks something in everyone listening. Elspeth looks to Theodosius, a question in her eyes. He gives the smallest shake of his head. Not tonight, sweetheart, she says gently. But soon. I promise. She shouldn't promise. She has no authority to promise. But she does it anyway, and Edmund nods, satisfied in the way children are satisfied when someone they trust makes them a promise. 2 guards step forward. They've been waiting at the edges of the hall, and escort Elspeth away. She goes without resistance, without looking back, because looking back would make Edmund cry again, and she won't do that to him. When she's gone, Edmund turns to his mother, his actual legal Lunaborn mother, and Lady Rosalind drops to her knees and pulls him into an embrace that looks desperate, possessive, absolutely aching with need. My son, she whispers into his hair. My baby. How did I lose you to a kitchen Omega? How did I fail so completely that you don't even know I'm your mother? Edmund allows the embrace, but he doesn't return it. He stands in her arms like a polite stranger tolerating affection from someone he barely knows. It's Lord Cedric who finally dismisses them all. Rosalind, take Edmund to his chambers. Stay with him tonight. No nursemaid, no servants. Just you and your son. Theodosius, my study. Now. They obey, because Lord Cedric's authority supersedes even an Alpha's in matters of pack law and council business. Rosalind carries Edmund away. He's gotten big for carrying, but she holds him like he's still an infant, like if she grips tight enough she can keep him hers. And Theodosius follows Lord Cedric to the private study where the worst decisions are made. The study is oak-paneled and book-lined, smelling of old leather and older power. Lord Cedric pours 2 glasses of blackberry wine, pack-made, thick and dark, and hands one to Theodosius before settling into the chair behind his massive desk. Tell me, Lord Cedric says without preamble, how an Omega nobody has ever heard of became more of a mother to your heir than your Luna wife? Theodosius drinks half the glass before answering. I don't know, he admits. Rosalind has always been. She's always been proper. Correct. She follows every tradition, every protocol. She's a perfect Luna by every measure the council established. Except, Lord Cedric says dryly, that your son doesn't love her. That's not. Theodosius starts, then stops because what can he say? They all heard Edmund. They all saw the way he clung to Elspeth and tolerated Rosalind. Let me tell you what I know, Lord Cedric continues. I know that my daughter was raised to be a Luna the way some women are raised to be scholars or warriors. Every lesson, every instruction, every moment of her childhood was designed to make her the perfect pack Luna. Perfect posture, perfect speech, perfect control, perfect distance. Distance. Theodosius repeats. Lunas of royal bloodlines are taught not to be too affectionate with children, Lord Cedric explains. Affection breeds dependence. Dependence breeds weakness. A Luna must produce strong heirs who can stand on their own, who can lead without needing comfort or softness or... He pauses, something bitter in his expression. Or love. Theodosius sets down his glass very carefully. You're saying Rosalind was taught to be cold. I'm saying, Lord Cedric corrects, that Rosalind was taught to be strong. That an heir to a pack needs strength, not softness. That a mother's role is to forge a future alpha, not to coddle a child. And by every measure of traditional pack law, she has done everything correctly. But Edmund doesn't want correct, Theodosius says slowly, understanding dawning. He wants someone who holds him when he cries, Lord Cedric finishes. Someone who smells like warm things. Someone who sings him to sleep. All the things my daughter was taught were beneath a Luna of her status. They sit in silence for a moment, two alphas contemplating the gap between what pack law demands and what a child needs. The council will rule at dawn, Lord Cedric says finally. They'll examine the Omega. They'll want to know if she used any kind of influence, herbal, magical or otherwise, to draw your son's affection. She didn't, Theodosius says with certainty. I would have smelled it. Any wolf would have smelled it. Perhaps. But the council will investigate regardless. And if they find nothing, Lord Cedric pauses. If they find nothing, Theodosius, they'll still exile her. Or worse. Because she committed the crime of being kind to a child, Theodosius says flatly. Because she violated her station, Lord Cedric corrects. Because she entered the family wing without permission. Because she allowed or encouraged an attachment that violates pack hierarchy. Because she has made your Luna look weak in front of 47 visiting packs. And weakness in a Luna is weakness in a pack, and weakness in a pack spreads like poison through the territories. Theodosius finishes the old saying. I know the law, Cedric. I wrote some of it. Then you know there's no good outcome here, Lord Cedric says bluntly. Either the Omega suffers for showing your son the affection his mother was taught to withhold, or you break pack law to protect her and undermine every hierarchy we've built over 3 centuries. Either way, someone pays in blood. Theodosius stands, paces to the window. Outside, the moon is nearly full, 3 nights from the actual full moon that will mark the formal gathering. Every pack in the Northern Territories will be here for that gathering. Every pack will be watching to see how Alpha Theodosius handles his rebellious son and the Omega who stole his affection. What would you do? He asks Lord Cedric. In my position. What would you do? Lord Cedric is quiet for a long moment. I would do what's best for the pack, he says finally. Even if it destroys everything else. It's not really an answer. But it's the only answer an alpha can give. In a cell beneath Shadowcrest Manor, they don't call it a cell, they call it holding quarters, but the locked door and barred window tell the truth. Elspeth Thornfield sits on a narrow bed and tries not to cry. She knew this would happen eventually. She's always known. You can't be an Omega in the Northern Territories without understanding that kindness is a luxury you can't afford. That overstepping your station comes with consequences that would make a beta faint and an alpha rage. But Edmund had been so small, crying in the dark, and nobody came. Night after night, she'd heard him from the kitchen courtyard. Heard the way his cries got softer over time. Not because he'd learned to soothe himself but because he'd learned that crying brought no comfort, so why bother? She'd only meant to check on him once. Just once. Just to make sure he was safe and warm and hadn't somehow gotten tangled in his blankets or fallen from his bed or... But when she'd opened that nursery door, Edmund had looked at her with those storm-gray eyes, tear-tracked and desperate, and said, "You came." Like it was a miracle. Like nobody had ever come before. And she'd stayed. Just for a few minutes. Just long enough to untangle his blankets and check that he was warm and sing him the old song her own mother had sung to her. Back before the fever took her. Back when Omegas could still have families and children and something resembling a normal life. The song about the moon and the wolf who was lost but found his way home by following the moon's light. Edmund had fallen asleep holding her hand. She'd gone back the next night. And the next. And the next. And now she'll die for it probably. Or be exiled, which is the same thing really, because an Omega without a pack is prey for every rogue and rival pack in the territories. The door to the holding quarters opens. Elspeth stands immediately, head bowed, hands folded. Proper Omega posture, the kind that says I know my place, I submit, I will not challenge. But when she glances up, it's not a guard or a council member. It's Alpha Theodosius. He's alone, which is irregular. When an Alpha visits holding quarters, there are always witnesses, always guards, always someone to ensure propriety is maintained. Alpha, Elspeth says, and her voice only shakes a little. Sit, Theodosius says quietly. And it's not a command, just a suggestion. Elspeth sits. Theodosius doesn't sit. He paces the small room like a caged thing, all that contained Alpha power with nowhere to go. Finally, he stops and looks at her directly. Tell me the truth, he says. Did you use anything to influence my son's affection? Any herb, any working, any? No, Alpha, Elspeth says firmly. On my blood and my bloodline, on the moon herself, I used nothing but kindness. I didn't even mean to, I never intended for him to. She stops, swallows hard. I only wanted him to stop crying. Theodosius studies her face like he's trying to read a text in a language he doesn't quite speak. He calls you mother, he says finally. He calls me Mama Ellie, Elspeth corrects gently. It's not the same as mother. I never asked him to call me anything. He started it on his own and I couldn't. Her voice cracks. How do you tell a child he's wrong about who makes him feel safe? Theodosius makes a rough sound, almost a laugh but not quite. My wife is destroyed, he says. She spent 3 hours tonight trying to get Edmund to tell her why he doesn't love her. Do you know what he said? Elspeth shakes her head mutely. He said, I do love you, Mama Rosalind. You're very pretty and you smell nice. But Mama Ellie loves me back. The words hang in the air between them, brutal in their childish honesty. He's 3 years old, Theodosius continues, and there's something broken in his voice now. 3 years old, and he's already learned to tell the difference between someone who tolerates his existence and someone who actually wants him. The Luna does want him, Elspeth says quickly, because she can't let this go unchallenged. She loves him. Anyone can see she loves him. She doesn't know how to. How to show it, Theodosius finishes. Yes, you know. Lord Cedric explained how royal Lunas are raised. All strength, no softness. All proper distance, no warmth. Everything designed to forge strong heirs and powerful packs. He sits down heavily on the chair across from Elspeth's bed. The council will want your blood tomorrow, he says bluntly. They'll find no evidence of manipulation. I already know you're telling the truth. But they'll still rule that you overstepped your station, violated household boundaries, undermined pack hierarchy, and made the Luna look weak before 47 visiting packs. They'll call for exile at minimum, execution at worst. Elspeth's hands are shaking again. She folds them in her lap, trying to still them. I understand, she whispers. Do you? Theodosius leans forward, elbows on his knees, and his eyes are intense. Do you understand that you're going to die or be exiled because you were kind to a crying child? Because you gave him the affection his mother was taught not to show? Because you committed the crime of loving my son? It's pack law, Elspeth says simply. I knew the risks. I knew. Did you love him? Theodosius interrupts. Did you love Edmund? Elspeth meets his eyes directly, and there are tears streaming down her face now, but her voice is steady. With everything in me, she says. Every time I heard him cry and went to him, every time I sang him to sleep, every time he showed me a bug he'd found or asked me why bread rises or told me about a dream he'd had. Yes, I loved him. I love him still. And I would do it all again, even knowing how it ends. Theodosius closes his eyes. The council convenes at dawn, he says. I can't stop what's coming, Elspeth. My authority only goes so far when pack law and the High Council are involved. But I can. He stops, seems to wrestle with something. I can make sure Edmund doesn't watch. I can make sure he doesn't know what happens to you. He'll think you went away, that you chose to leave, and eventually he'll forget. He won't forget, Elspeth says softly. Children don't forget the people who loved them. Maybe not, Theodosius agrees. But he'll grow past it. He'll become the Alpha he was born to be. And someday maybe he'll understand that this is how the packs survive. By maintaining hierarchy, by keeping Omegas in their place, by ensuring that. He stops because even he can hear how hollow the words sound. You don't believe that, Elspeth says, and it's not a question. What I believe doesn't matter, Theodosius says roughly. What matters is pack law. What matters is maintaining order. What matters is. The door bursts open. A guard stands there, breathing hard. Alpha, you need to come now. It's the young lord. He's gone missing. Theodosius is on his feet in an instant. What do you mean, missing? Lady Rosalind was reading to him in his chambers, trying to get him to sleep, and she stepped away for just a moment to call for tea. And when she came back, the window was open and he, Alpha, the drop from that window is 20 feet onto stone pavement. If he jumped, Theodosius is already moving, already running, and Elspeth is right behind him because she doesn't need permission, doesn't need authorization, doesn't need anything except the knowledge that Edmund is in danger. The guards try to stop her. An Omega in holding doesn't get to run through the manor, but Theodosius snaps, "Let her through," and they fall back. They find Edmund in the kitchen. He's sitting on the floor next to the big hearth where bread rises overnight, wrapped in a blanket he dragged down from his chambers, and he's crying with the awful, hopeless sobs of a child who tried to be brave and couldn't manage it. "I wanted to wait for Mama Ellie," he says when his parents burst into the kitchen. "I climbed down the ivy. Papa taught me how, remember, Papa? You said every good Alpha should know how to climb. And I came here because this is where Mama Ellie is, but she's not here, and I waited and she's still not here, and..." He dissolves into sobs again, and Elspeth doesn't think, doesn't hesitate, doesn't consider the consequences. She crosses the kitchen and drops to her knees and pulls Edmund into her arms, and he clings to her like she's the only solid thing in a world that's tilting apart. "Shoo, sweetheart," she murmurs, rocking him gently. "Shoo, I'm here. I'm here now. You're in trouble because of me." Edmund sobs into her shoulder. "I heard the guards talking. They said you're in trouble because I said you were my mama, and now they're going to make you go away, and it's all my fault." "No," Elspeth says firmly, tilting his chin up so he has to meet her eyes. "No, Edmund, none of this is your fault. Not one single bit. You're a child, and children need people to love them, and there's nothing wrong with that. Do you understand me? Nothing. But you're in trouble. Grown-ups will sort out grown-up problems," Elspeth tells him. "That's not something you need to carry, little lord. That's not your burden." Rosalind has appeared in the doorway. She's still in her nightdress, her perfect hair disarrayed for perhaps the first time in her life, and she's staring at her son in Elspeth's arms with an expression that's equal parts grief and recognition and something that might be understanding. "Edmund," she says quietly. "Come to mother, darling." Edmund turns to look at her, and you can see the war happening in his small face. Duty versus desire, obedience versus need. "I love you, Mama Rosalind," he says carefully. "But I need Mama Ellie right now. Is that allowed?" The question breaks something in Rosalind's carefully constructed walls. She crosses the kitchen, and Aluna never enters the kitchen, it's beneath her station, and drops to her knees beside Elspeth and Edmund. "May I?" she asks Elspeth quietly, and it's the first time in her life Lady Rosalind Ashford Blackthorne has asked an Omega for permission for anything. Elspeth nods, and Rosalind reaches out and touches Edmund's hair with trembling fingers. "I'm sorry," Rosalind whispers, and she's talking to Edmund but looking at Elspeth. "I didn't know. I didn't understand. They taught me that loving you too much would make you weak, that holding you too close would make you dependent, that a future Alpha needs strength, not softness. I didn't know I was. I didn't know I was starving you. Edmund looks between his two mothers, one Luna-born and elegant, one Omega-born and plain, and his small face scrunches with the effort of trying to understand things that even adults struggle to comprehend. Can I have two mamas? He asks finally. Like how Papa has lots of wolves in his pack. Can I have Mama Rosalind for pretty things and learning to be proper? And Mama Ellie for warm things and when I'm scared? The simplicity of the question, the childish logic, the absolute innocent hope. It destroys both women in different ways. Rosalind's face crumples. No, darling, she whispers. That's not, pack law doesn't allow. But she stops, because Theodosius has entered the kitchen now, and he's looking at the three of them with an expression that suggests he's calculating something, weighing options, considering possibilities that perhaps haven't been considered before. Why not? He says quietly. Everyone turns to stare at him. Why not? He repeats, and there's something dangerous in his voice now. The kind of dangerous that comes when an alpha starts questioning the very foundations of pack law. We have pack mothers who help raise pups when blood mothers die. We have fostering traditions where children are sent to other packs to learn. We have. Those are all within proper hierarchy. Lord Cedric's voice comes from the doorway. He's appeared like a ghost, wrapped in a sleeping robe. His silver hair loose around his shoulders. Pack mothers are betas or alphas of appropriate rank. Fostering happens between families of equal status. What you're suggesting, an omega as a co-mother to a royal heir, has no precedent in 3 centuries of pack law. Then perhaps, Theodosius says, and his voice has gone very quiet, very calm, the way it does before he makes a declaration that will change everything. It's time we created new precedent. The silence that follows is absolute. Lord Cedric enters the kitchen fully, and behind him are 3 other council members, roused from their beds by the commotion. They're all elderly, all powerful, all deeply traditional. Their presence fills the kitchen with the weight of centuries of accumulated authority. You cannot be serious, Lord Cedric says flatly. Theodosius, think about what you're suggesting. Legitimizing an omega's attachment to your heir. Giving her status that undermines every hierarchy we've built. Setting a precedent that would allow any omega in any pack to claim. She's not claiming anything, Theodosius interrupts. My son is. He's the one who chose her. He's the one who calls her mother. He's the one who climbed down 20 feet of ivy in the dark to find her. Are you saying we should punish a child for knowing who makes him feel safe? We're saying, Council Member Lady Philippa Thornberry interjects. She's 75 winters old, sharp as broken glass, traditional as stone, that allowing this sets a dangerous precedent. If the heir to the Shadowcrest pack can choose an omega over his Luna-born mother, what does that say to every other pack? What does that say about the value of royal bloodlines? What does that say about the entire structure of pack hierarchy? It says, Rosalind speaks up and everyone turns to her in surprise, that we've built our hierarchy on traditions that value proper breeding over actual love, that we've confused strength with coldness, that we've taught Luna-born mothers to be so distant from their children that the children prefer kitchen omegas who show them basic kindness. You can hear the shock ripple through the council members. A Luna, a royal Luna, just criticized the very system that gave her power. Rosalind, Lord Cedric says warningly. No, father, Rosalind says, and she stands now, still holding Edmund's hand, but her voice is steady. No, I won't be silent about this. You raised me to be the perfect Luna. Perfect posture, perfect speech, perfect control, perfect distance. And I did everything right. Everything. I followed every rule, every tradition, every instruction about how to raise a strong heir. And my son doesn't love me. Her voice breaks on those last words, but she pushes through. He loves an omega who gives him bread and honey and sings him to sleep. He loves someone who commits the crime of basic maternal affection. And if we punish her for that, if we exile her or execute her or even just send her away, we're telling every future Luna that loving their children too much is a weakness. We're telling every heir that needing comfort makes them unfit to lead. We're building a future of alphas who are strong and powerful and completely broken inside. The kitchen is silent except for the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Council member Lord Ambrose Weatherby clears his throat. He's the eldest of the council, 80 winters, and his word carries weight that even Lord Cedric respects. Lady Rosalind makes a compelling point, he says slowly. However, emotion cannot dictate pack law. If we allow this Omega to remain, to continue her relationship with the heir, we undermine 3 centuries of carefully maintained hierarchy. Other Omegas will see this and believe they too can rise above their station. Other heirs will see this and believe they can reject their proper parents in favor of whoever makes them feel comfortable. The chaos that would result would be nothing, Theodosius interrupts, compared to the chaos of having an entire generation of alphas who were raised without love, without comfort, without any understanding that strength and kindness aren't mutually exclusive. He steps forward, and when he speaks, it's with full alpha authority. I am Alpha of the Shadowcrest Pack. This is my territory, my manor, my household. And I am declaring that Omega Elspeth Thornfield will remain in my employment, with access to my son, under a new station that we will create specifically for this purpose. You cannot create new stations without council approval, Lady Philippa snaps. Watch me, Theodosius says flatly. The council advises. A rule. That's pack law too, or have you forgotten? Theodosius, Lord Cedric says, and there's genuine concern in his voice now. If you do this, if you openly defy council tradition on a matter this significant, you'll fracture the northern territories. Half the packs will support you. Half will oppose you. We'll have conflict that could last generations. Then let there be conflict, Theodosius says, and his eyes are blazing now. Because I will not sacrifice my son's happiness and my wife's sanity and a good woman's life just to maintain a system that values appearance over reality. Edmund, still sitting on the floor with his small hand in Rosalind's and his other hand clutching Elspeth's dress, speaks up in his child's voice. Papa, are you fighting to keep Mama Ellie? Theodosius crouches down to his son's level. Yes, son. I am. Good, Edmund says with simple certainty. Because she's pack now. I chose her. Out of the mouths of children, as the old saying goes. Council member Lord Geoffrey Blackwood. He's been silent until now, watching, calculating, finally speaks. There may be a precedent, he says carefully. Everyone turns to him. 4 centuries ago, before the Great Consolidation, there was a practice called soul bonding, Lord Geoffrey continues. When a child was born and the mother couldn't nurse or raise the child for whatever reason, the pack would assign a soul bond, a secondary parent, chosen specifically for that child, regardless of rank or status. The soul bond had legal standing. They could inherit property, they could speak for the child in council, they could. That practice was abolished, Lady Philippa interrupts. It was abolished specifically because it allowed too much social mobility. Omegas were bonding to alpha children and claiming inheritance rights. It was abolished, Lord Geoffrey corrects, because the practice was being abused. But the law was never formally struck from the ancient texts. Simply fell out of use. Technically, an alpha could still invoke soul bond rights. The kitchen erupts into argument. Half the council members are insisting that Lord Geoffrey is wrong, that the practice is dead law, that invoking it would be worse than creating new station. The other half are frantically trying to remember the specifics of ancient bonding law. Through it all, Elspeth sits very still, holding Edmund, trying to process the fact that these powerful wolves are arguing about her fate like she's a piece of furniture to be arranged and rearranged. Finally, Lord Cedric raises his hand for silence. Enough, he says, and his alpha authority. He was an alpha before he became council head, cuts through the noise. If soul bonding law is indeed still technically valid, then we have a path forward. But it comes with conditions. He turns to Elspeth directly. Omega Thornfield, do you understand what soul bonding would mean? You would be legally tied to Edmund Blackthorne for life. You could never leave the pack. You could never mate or have children of your own. You would exist solely to serve as his secondary parent until he reaches his majority at 25 winters. Your entire life would be dedicated to a child who isn't yours by blood, to a pack that will always see you as an Omega who overstepped. Are you willing to accept this? Elspeth looks down at Edmund, who's fallen asleep against her shoulder despite all the commotion. His small face peaceful in a way it never is anywhere else. Yes, she says simply. I accept. You haven't heard all the conditions, Lord Cedric continues. If you fail in your duties, if Edmund is harmed under your care, if he shows weakness that can be attributed to your influence, if any scandal touches his name that traces back to you, the bond will be severed and you will be executed. Not exiled. Executed. Those are the terms of ancient bonding law. I understand, Elspeth says. You would live in a servant's quarters, not the family wing, Lord Cedric presses. You would have access to Edmund only at designated times, approved by Lady Rosalind. You would have no authority over his education, his training, his future. You would simply be someone who loves him, Elspeth finishes quietly. Someone he can come to when he's scared. Someone who makes him feel safe. I don't need authority, Lord Cedric. I don't need status or rooms in the family wing or any say in his future. I just need to be allowed to love him. Rosalind makes a small sound, somewhere between a laugh and a sob. She understands motherhood better than I do, she says to no one in particular. An Omega with no children understands it better than a Luna raised specifically for this purpose. You're learning, Elspeth says gently to Rosalind. Tonight, when Edmund needed both of us, you came to the kitchen. You got on your knees. You asked permission. You met him where he was instead of demanding he come to you. That's not nothing, my lady. That's everything. The two women look at each other across the sleeping child between them, and something passes between them. Not quite friendship, not quite understanding, but perhaps the beginning of both. Theodosius stands. I invoke ancient soul bond rights, he declares formally. I, Alpha Theodosius Blackthorn of Shadowcrest, formally bond Omega Elspeth Thornfield to my heir, Edmund Blackthorn, under the terms and conditions of preconsolidation law. Let it be recorded in the pack archives. Let it be witnessed by the High Council. Let it be. Wait, Lady Rosalind says, and everyone freezes. She stands slowly, carefully, so as not to wake Edmund. When she speaks, her voice is clear and formal. I, Lady Rosalind Ashford Blackthorn, Luna of Shadowcrest, Mother of the Heir, add my consent to this bond. I formally acknowledge Elspeth Thornfield a soul bond to my son, and I grant her access to Edmund whenever he has need of her, within the bounds of propriety and pack law. The council members stare at her. Luna's consent wasn't technically required for soul bonding, but her offering it freely changes everything. It transforms this from an Alpha's unilateral decision into a family choice. Lord Cedric studies his daughter for a long moment. You understand what this means? He asks quietly. You're legitimizing another woman's relationship with your son. You're admitting publicly that you couldn't give him what he needed. The other Luna packs will see this as weakness. Let them, Rosalind says steadily. I'd rather be seen as weak than lose my son entirely. And father. She meets his eyes directly. Perhaps it's time the Luna packs learned that admitting you need help isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Lord Cedric is quiet for so long that the only sound is the crackling fire and Edmund's soft breathing. Finally he nods once, sharp and decisive. The High Council acknowledges the soul bond between Omega Elspeth Thornfield and heir Edmund Blackthorn of Shadowcrest. He declares formally. Let it be recorded. Let it be witnessed. And let it be known that this sets precedent for all packs in the Northern Territories. A precedent that will be studied, debated, and likely fought over for generations to come. He looks directly at Theodosius. You've just changed the foundation of pack hierarchy. I hope you understand the chaos you've unleashed. I understand that my son will grow up knowing he's loved, Theodosius says quietly. That's all that matters. The council members file out, some approving, some clearly angry, all deeply troubled by the implications. Lord Cedric is the last to leave, and he pauses in the doorway. "Rosalind," he says, "your mother would be proud of you. She always thought the Luna traditions had gotten too rigid, too cold. She would have liked to see you bend them." It's the first time he's mentioned Rosalind's mother in years. She died when Rosalind was young, teaching Rosalind that even Lunas weren't immune to mortality. When they're finally alone, just Theodosius, Rosalind, Elspeth and sleeping Edmund, the weight of what just happened settles over them like a heavy blanket. "We should get him to bed," Rosalind says quietly. "He's had too much excitement for one night." "I'll carry him," Theodosius offers, but Elspeth shakes her head. "Let me," she says. "Just this once. Let me carry him to his chambers and put him to bed properly." Rosalind hesitates, and you can see the instinct to refuse, to reclaim her territory, to assert her proper role. But then she nods. "Come with us," she says instead. I want to watch how you do it. How you make him feel safe." So the three of them process through Shadowcrest Manor. An Alpha, a Luna, an Omega, and a sleeping child. And every servant they pass stops and stares because they've heard the rumors by now, heard about the council meeting in the kitchen, heard about soul bonds and ancient law and hierarchy crumbling. In Edmund's chambers, Elspeth lays him gently in his bed. He stirs slightly, makes a small sound of protest, and she sits on the edge of the bed and begins to sing, that song about the moon and the wolf who found his way home. Rosalind watches from the doorway, and tears are streaming down her perfect face, because this is what she should have been doing all along. This is what being a mother actually means. When Edmund is truly asleep, Elspeth stands and turns to find both Theodosius and Rosalind watching her. "Teach me," Rosalind whispers. "Please. Teach me how to do what you do." Elspeth crosses to her, this Omega approaching a Luna, and does something absolutely forbidden. She takes Rosalind's hands in hers. "You don't need teaching, my lady," she says gently. "You need permission. Permission to be imperfect. Permission to hold him too long. Permission to worry too much. Permission to love him in ways that aren't proper or distant or appropriate for a Luna of your station." "And if I'm terrible at it?" Rosalind asks, and she sounds so young suddenly, so uncertain. "Then you practice," Elspeth says simply. "The way anyone practices anything they want to be good at. You show up and you try, and when you fail you try again. That's all motherhood is, really. Showing up and trying." Theodosius watches this exchange with something complicated in his expression. "The pack will never be the same after tonight," he says quietly. "Half the territories will call me visionary. Half will call me a traitor. We've opened a door that can never be closed." "Good," Rosalind says with surprising firmness. "Let it stay open. Let other Lunas see that they don't have to choose between being strong and being loving. Let other Omegas see that kindness and care have value beyond their station. Let the whole system crack if it needs to crack." They stand there in Edmund's chambers, three adults trying to figure out how to raise one small boy in a world that's just changed its rules, and the weight of what comes next is almost crushing. Because tomorrow, when the gathering convenes, 47 packs will demand to know what happened. They'll want explanations. They'll want assurances. They'll want proof that Shadowcrest hasn't lost its mind. And what can Theodosius tell them? That he looked at his son clinging to an Omega and realized that everything the packs have built over 3 centuries might be fundamentally wrong. That he chose his family over pack law, and damn the consequences. The consequences will be severe. That much is certain. 3 days later, the formal gathering convenes under the full moon. Every pack in the Northern Territories is represented. 47 alphas, their Lunas, their betas and advisors and guards. The great courtyard of Shadowcrest Manor has been transformed into a massive assembly ground, with the visiting packs arranged in concentric circles according to status and alliance. Alpha Theodosius stands at the center, with Rosalind at his right hand and Lord Cedric at his left. Edmund stands in front of his father, dressed in formal pack attire, looking very small and very serious. And behind them, in a position that no Omega has occupied in 3 centuries, stands Elspeth Thornfield, wearing a grey dress with a silver wolf brooch, the mark of a soul-bonded servant. The whispers are immediate and vicious. Is that the Omega? She's standing with the family. An Omega. With the family. This is an outrage. This violates every. The heir chose her over his own Luna mother, I heard. Soul bond, they're saying. Ancient law. But nobody's used soul bonds since. Alpha Marcus Ironwood of the Frost March pack steps forward. He's massive, 6'6" of pure muscle and authority, traditional to his bones. Alpha Theodosius, he says, and his voice carries across the entire courtyard. We've heard disturbing rumors. Rumors that you've allowed an Omega to claim parental rights to your heir. Rumors that you've invoked ancient laws that were abolished for good reason. Rumors that you've fundamentally undermined the pack hierarchy to accommodate a child's tantrum. The way he says child's tantrum makes it clear what he thinks of this entire situation. Theodosius doesn't flinch. The rumors are true, he says clearly. I have invoked soul bond rights. I have formally bonded Omega Elspeth Thornfield to my heir. And I have done so with the full consent of my Luna and the acknowledgement of the High Council. Then you are a fool, Alpha Marcus says bluntly. You've set a precedent that will destroy pack hierarchy across every territory. If an heir can choose an Omega over his Luna-born parent, what's to stop every dissatisfied pup from doing the same? What's to stop Omegas from manipulating children for their own advancement? What's to stop the entire carefully maintained structure of pack society from collapsing? What's to stop it? Theodosius repeats, and his voice has gone very quiet, very dangerous. Perhaps the fact that most Omegas don't want to raise children that aren't theirs. Perhaps the fact that most heirs love their Luna mothers just fine when those mothers actually show them affection. Perhaps the fact that this entire crisis only happened because we've spent 3 centuries teaching Lunas to be cold and distant and calling it strength. The courtyard erupts into an argument. Some alphas are nodding, seeing truth in Theodosius's words. Others are shouting denial, insisting that traditional Luna training produces strong heirs and that any deviation is weakness. Through it all, Edmund stands very still, very quiet, holding his father's hand on one side and reaching back to hold Elspeth's hand on the other. Alpha Helena Ravenswood of the Crimson Highlands, she's one of the rare female alphas, fierce and intelligent, steps forward. I would speak, she says, and the authority in her voice cuts through the chaos. The courtyard quiets. 20 years ago, Alpha Helena says clearly, I gave birth to twins, a son and a daughter. My son was strong, healthy, perfect. My daughter was weak. She cried constantly. She wouldn't nurse properly. The pack elders told me to let her die, that a weak alpha female was worse than no daughter at all. You can hear the shock ripple through the assembly. Nobody speaks about letting pups die, even though everyone knows it happens in the more traditional packs. I refused, Helena continues. I gave my daughter to an Omega wet nurse named Martha. Martha raised her, loved her, and taught her that strength comes in many forms. And now my daughter is the finest warrior in the Crimson Highlands. She's strong because Martha showed her that needing help isn't a weakness. She's fierce because Martha taught her that love and strength aren't opposites. She turns to face Theodosius directly. What you've done here, formally recognizing that truth, giving it legal standing, acknowledging that children need love more than they need propriety. It's not weakness. It's a revolution. And I support it. The courtyard erupts again, but this time the division is clear. Roughly half the packs are nodding, agreeing, seeing wisdom in Helena's words. The other half are outraged, insisting that this undermines everything. Alpha Marcus points directly at Elspeth. That Omega stands where only family should stand. She wears pack symbols. She holds the heir's hand like she has rights. This is an abomination of every tradition She is family. Edmund's small voice cuts through Alpha Marcus's tirade. She's my soul bond. That's pack law. Old pack law. Papa said so. The fact that a 3-year-old just interrupted an alpha would normally be grounds for severe discipline. But Edmund's simple certainty, his childish defense of the woman he loves, somehow carries more weight than any adult argument. Alpha Marcus stares at the child, at the Omega, at Theodosius. "This will fracture the northern territories," he says finally. "You realize that. Some packs will follow your lead. Some will condemn it. We'll have conflict that will last generations." "Then let there be conflict," Theodosius says, echoing his earlier words. "Because I will not sacrifice my family to maintain a tradition that values appearance over truth." Lord Cedric steps forward. "The High Council has reviewed ancient soul bond law," he announces formally. "The law is valid. The bond is legal. Alpha Theodosius acted within his rights. Any pack that wishes to challenge this ruling will need to challenge 3 centuries of legal precedent. It's a warning and everyone knows it. You can't selectively ignore ancient law just because it's inconvenient. If soul bond law is valid, it's valid for everyone, which means other packs could invoke it too if they wanted." The assembly breaks into smaller groups, alphas clustering with their advisors, debating, arguing, trying to figure out how this changes their own pack dynamics. And in the center of it all stands Edmund, holding his father's hand and his soul bond's hand, completely oblivious to the political earthquake happening around him because he's 3 years old and all he knows is that the people he loves are all together and nobody's taking them away. That night, after the gathering concludes with no clear resolution, the territories are split, some supporting Theodosius, some condemning him, most waiting to see what happens next. Rosalind comes to Elspeth's quarters. Elspeth has been given a room in the servants' wing, but it's larger than most, with a window overlooking the kitchen gardens and actual furniture beyond a bed and chair. It's a clear message. She's still a servant, but she's a servant with unprecedented status. "May I come in?" Rosalind asks from the doorway, and the fact that she's asking permission to enter an Omega's room speaks volumes. "Of course, my lady," Elspeth says, standing immediately, reverting to proper Omega posture even though they're supposedly past all that now. Rosalind enters and sits on the simple chair, gesturing for Elspeth to sit on the bed. For a long moment they just look at each other, Luna and Omega, both bound to the same child in different ways. "I need to ask you something," Rosalind says finally. "And I need you to answer honestly. Do you resent me for being Edmund's mother when you're the one he loves?" Elspeth considers the question carefully. "No," she says finally. "I don't resent you, my lady. I pity you." Rosalind flinches as if struck. "Pity? You were raised to be something impossible," Elspeth explains gently. "Perfect Luna, perfect mother, perfect in every way except the ways that actually matter to a child. You were taught that love is weakness and that distance is strength. And now you're trapped between who you were raised to be and who your son needs you to be. That's not something to resent. That's something to pity." Tears well in Rosalind's eyes. "I don't know how to be what he needs," she whispers. "I don't know how to be soft when I've spent my entire life being hard. I don't know how to hold him close when I was taught to push him toward independence. I don't know how to." "You're already doing it," Elspeth interrupts. "You came to the kitchen. You knelt down. You came here tonight to ask me for help instead of demanding I stay away from your son. Those are all acts of softness, my lady. Those are all acts of love." "Teach me the song," Rosalind says suddenly. "The one you sing to him. The moon and the wolf. Teach me so I can sing it too." So Elspeth teaches Lady Rosalind Ashford Blackthorn, Luna of the Great Shadowcrest Pack, daughter of the High Council, perfect in every way except the ones that matter. She teaches her a simple lullaby that any common Omega would know. And Rosalind learns it, haltingly at first, her voice unused to such gentle melody, but she learns it. "Tomorrow night," Rosalind says when the lesson is complete, "we'll both put him to bed. Together. You can sing the first verse. I'll sing the second. And maybe he'll start to understand that he can have both of us. That he doesn't have to choose." "He shouldn't have to choose," Elspeth agrees. "No child should." They part ways with something tentative building between them. Not quite friendship, not quite trust, but perhaps the foundations of both. 6 months pass. The Northern Territories remain fractured. 23 packs have followed Theodosius's lead and acknowledged that Luna training needs to change, that Omegas can have value beyond their station, that children need love as much as they need strength. 24 packs have condemned Shadowcrest as weak, traditional, and insisted that ancient ways must be maintained. Edmund thrives. He splits his time between his mother and his soul bond, learning proper behavior and royal protocol from Rosalind, learning warmth and comfort from Elspeth. He's starting to understand that strength comes in many forms, that needing help isn't weakness, that love and power aren't opposites. Rosalind changes too. Slowly, carefully, she learns to hold Edmund longer, to worry less about whether affection will make him weak. She learns Elspeth's songs. She starts coming to the kitchen sometimes, just to sit and watch Edmund help Elspeth knead bread dough. She's still a Luna, still proper, still poised, still royal, but there's warmth in her now that wasn't there before. And then, on the night of the winter solstice, everything falls apart. A messenger arrives at Shadowcrest Manor, riding hard. His horse nearly dead from exhaustion. He collapses in the courtyard, gasping out a warning that makes every wolf within hearing distance go absolutely still. "Alpha Marcus," he gasps. "Alpha Marcus of Frost March. He's calling for a challenge." He says Alpha Theodosius has weakened the Northern Territories. That soul bonds are an abomination. That Shadowcrest must be. He doesn't finish. He doesn't need to. Every wolf knows what a challenge means. Alpha Marcus Ironwood is coming to kill Theodosius and take Shadowcrest by force. The challenge will happen in 3 days, under the new moon, with every pack in the territories watching. Theodosius could refuse the challenge. It's his right as established alpha. But refusing would mark him as weak, would invite other challenges, and would essentially guarantee that Shadowcrest would be attacked by every traditional pack looking to make a point. So he accepts. 3 days. 3 days until Theodosius either kills Alpha Marcus and proves that soul bonds don't weaken a pack, or until Alpha Marcus kills Theodosius and becomes the new alpha of Shadowcrest. If Marcus wins, the first thing he'll do is dissolve the soul bond. He's already proclaimed it publicly. He'll exile Elspeth, or worse. And Edmund will grow up under an alpha who believes that love is weakness and that traditional hierarchy is all that matters. The night before the challenge, Elspeth finds Theodosius in his study, going over challenge protocols, preparing his will in case the worst happens. "Alpha," she says from the doorway. He looks up, and there's exhaustion in his eyes, the weight of knowing that tomorrow he might die and leave everything he's built in ruins. "I should never have let you bond to Edmund," he says quietly. "I should have sent you away 6 months ago. You be safe now. In some other pack living a normal Omega life. Instead you're here, watching everything fall apart." "I wouldn't trade it," Elspeth says fiercely. "Not one moment. Even if tomorrow you lose and Marcus exiles me, and I never see Edmund again, I wouldn't trade these 6 months for anything." Theodosius stands, crosses to her. "If I lose tomorrow," he says quietly, "Marcus will come for Edmund's training. He'll undo everything we've built. He'll teach Edmund that love is weakness, that needing comfort is shameful, that strength is all that matters." "Then don't lose," Elspeth says simply. "It's not that easy," Theodosius says roughly. "Marcus is younger than me. Stronger. He trains 6 hours a day for exactly this kind of challenge. And I've been so focused on pack politics and soul bonds and trying to change 3 centuries of tradition that I haven't trained properly in months." "Then maybe," Elspeth says carefully, "strength isn't everything. Maybe you'll win because you're fighting for something he can never understand." "Love doesn't win challenges," Theodosius says flatly. "Claws and teeth and superior strength win challenges." But even as he says it, he's not sure he believes it anymore. The challenge ground is set in a clearing 2 miles from Shadowcrest Manor. By dawn, every pack in the Northern Territories has assembled. The traditional packs stand on one side, the progressive packs on the other. The tension is thick enough to choke on. Edmund stands with Rosalind and Elspeth, watching his father prepare for a fight that will determine his entire future. He's too young to fully understand what's happening, but he knows it's important, knows his papa is in danger. Will papa win? He asks, looking up at his two mothers. Rosalind opens her mouth to give him proper lunar reassurance. Of course your father will win, he's strong, he's powerful, he's alpha. But the words stick in her throat because she's terrified Theodosius will lose. It's Elspeth who answers. Your papa is fighting for you, she says simply. For the right to raise you with love and strength together. That's worth fighting for. That makes him stronger than any wolf who only fights for pride. Edmund nods, satisfied with this answer in the way children are satisfied when adults give them truth instead of comfort. The challenge begins at dawn. Theodosius and Marcus face each other across the clearing, both shifted into wolf form. Theodosius's wolf is dark gray with those same storm-colored eyes. Marcus's is massive and black as midnight. They circle each other. And every wolf watching knows this isn't just about one pack or one omega or one soul bond. This is about the future of every pack in the territories. This is about whether love has a place in the pack hierarchy or whether tradition and strength are all that matter. Marcus strikes first, a blur of black fur and teeth and claws. Theodosius dodges, barely, and the watching crowd gasps because Marcus is fast, faster than anyone expected. The fight is brutal. It lasts 20 minutes, which feels like hours. Blood stains the ground. Both wolves are injured. Marcus has a deep gash along his flank, and Theodosius is limping from a torn hind leg. They're evenly matched. Too evenly matched. And then Marcus gets his jaws around Theodosius's throat. The crowd goes silent. One bite, one crushing moment of pressure, and Theodosius Blackthorn, Alpha of Shadowcrest, will be dead. Edmund screams. It's a child's scream, high and terrified, cutting through the awful silence like a blade. Papa! And Theodosius, with Marcus's jaws locked around his throat, with death a heartbeat away, hears his son's voice and something changes in him. Something fundamental shifts. He's not just fighting for tradition or pack law or even his own life anymore. He's fighting for the right to see his son grow up. For the right to watch Edmund learn to be strong and kind. For the right to prove that love doesn't make you weak. It makes you absolutely ferocious. With strength born of pure desperation, Theodosius twists in Marcus's grip. It tears his throat, blood pours freely, but he twists and gets his own jaws around Marcus's front leg. He bites down with everything he has, and the snap of bone echoes across the clearing. Marcus releases him with a howl of pain, stumbling back on 3 legs. They face each other again, both gravely injured, both barely able to stand. Marcus with a shattered leg. Theodosius with a throat torn so badly that he might bleed out before the fight even concludes. By all rights they should both yield. They should call it a draw and let the council arbitrate. But Marcus lunges again, desperate to finish this before his leg gives out completely. Theodosius meets him head-on. What happens next is over in seconds. Theodosius goes low, uses Marcus's own momentum against him, gets underneath the bigger wolf and, with the last of his strength, tears out Marcus's throat. Marcus Ironwood, Alpha of Frost March, traditional to his bones, powerful and strong and absolutely certain that old ways are best ways. He dies on the challenge ground with his blood soaking into the earth. Theodosius stands over the body for one moment, swaying, and then his legs give out. He collapses beside his defeated enemy, his own blood pooling beneath him. The pack healers rush forward, both sides traditional and progressive, because a fallen alpha is sacred regardless of politics. They work frantically on Theodosius's throat, packing the wound with herbs, calling for stitching supplies, fighting to keep him alive. Edmund breaks away from his mothers and runs across the challenge ground. Nobody stops him. He's the heir, and his father might be dying, and what kind of monster would stop a child from reaching his dying father? Papa! Edmund sobs, dropping to his knees beside Theodosius's massive wolf form. Papa, please don't die. Please. I'll be good. I'll be strong. I'll do everything right. Just please don't die. Theodosius's wolf is too injured to shift back to human form, but his storm-gray eyes find his son's face, and there's something in them. Recognition, love, desperate hope that he'll survive this. Elspeth is there suddenly, dropping to her knees beside Edmund, and she does something absolutely unthinkable. She puts her hands directly on the Alpha's wound, adding pressure while the healers work, getting his blood all over her Omega hands, breaking every rule about who can touch an Alpha's injuries. Nobody stops her. Not even the traditional pack healers. Because right now, keeping Theodosius alive matters more than protocol. Stay with him, Elspeth tells Edmund firmly, even as she works. Keep talking to him. Tell him about the bread we made yesterday. Tell him about the story we read. Keep him here with us. So Edmund talks. He talks about bread and honey and stories and the new words he learned and how he can count to 20 now. He talks about everything and nothing. His small voice the only sound besides the healer's urgent instructions. Rosalind arrives, her perfect composure shattered, and she drops to her knees on Theodosius's other side. She takes his massive paw in her hands and leans close to his wolf's ear. "Don't you dare leave me," she whispers fiercely. "Don't you dare die for a principle and leave me to raise our son alone. Need you. Man needs you. The whole damned pack needs you. So you stay here. You stay." It takes 2 hours of desperate healing work, but eventually Theodosius's breathing steadies. His wolf form shimmers and he shifts back to human. A good sign, the healers say. If he can shift, he'll live. He's unconscious, battered. His throat wrapped in so many bandages he looks like he's wearing a collar, but he's alive. The challenge is over. Shadowcrest stands. The soul bond is validated through blood and combat. And the Northern Territories have their answer. Love doesn't make you weak. Sometimes love makes you strong enough to fight when any sane wolf would yield. Strong enough to win when you should have died. Alpha Helena Ravenswood steps forward to address the assembled packs. With both Theodosius and Marcus down, she's the senior Alpha present, and her word carries weight. "Let it be recorded," she declares formally, "that Alpha Theodosius Blackthorn of Shadowcrest has defended his pack, his choices, and his right to determine his own household traditions through honorable challenge. Let it also be recorded that the soul bond between Omega Elspeth Thornfield and Heir Edmund Blackthorn is validated by combat and recognized by all packs present." She pauses, lets that sink in. "Going forward," Helena continues, "any pack that wishes to invoke soul bond rights may do so, following the ancient protocols. Any pack that wishes to maintain traditional Luna training may do so. But no pack will condemn another pack's choices in this matter. We have seen enough blood today. Let that be the end of it. It's not perfect. It's not a unanimous agreement. But it's peace, or at least the promise of peace, which is more than anyone expected when Marcus called his challenge." The traditional packs file away, some angry, some thoughtful, all processing what they've witnessed. The progressive packs remain, offering support to Shadowcrest, promising alliance, acknowledging that something fundamental has shifted in pack culture today. 3 days later, Theodosius wakes up. He's in his own bed in his own manner, with Rosalind asleep in a chair beside him and Edmund curled up at the foot of the bed like a loyal pup. Elspeth sits in the corner, mending one of Edmund's torn shirts, keeping watch. When Theodosius tries to speak, his throat screams in protest. The healer said it would be weeks before he could talk properly, months before the scars faded. Elspeth sees him wake and crosses to the bed quietly. She doesn't touch him, that would be too familiar even now, but she smiles gently. "You won," she whispers. "You're alive. Edmund is safe. The bond stands." Theodosius tries to smile, but it turns into a wince of pain. He gestures weakly at Rosalind, at Edmund, a question in his eyes. "They haven't left your side," Elspeth tells him quietly. "Your lady wife has slept in that chair for 3 days, and your son refuses to go more than 10 feet from your bed. You're very loved, Alpha. In case you didn't know." The way she says it, gentle, sincere, with no jealousy or resentment, makes Theodosius's eyes burn with tears he can't shed. Rosalind wakes then, her Luna instincts alerting her to the change in the room. She sees Theodosius awake and makes a sound between a sob and a laugh. "You reckless, stubborn, wonderful idiot," she breathes, taking his hand carefully. "You nearly died. You nearly left us. All for a principle." Theodosius squeezes her hand weakly, and his eyes say what his damaged throat can't. Not for a principle. For Edmund. For the right to choose love over tradition. Edmund stirs at the foot of the bed, feels his father move, and scrambles up to see. When he realizes his papa is awake, his face splits into the brightest smile anyone has ever seen. "Papa," he says, careful not to jostle the bed. "You're awake. The healer said you would wake up, but I was scared you wouldn't. And Mama Rosalind said to have faith, and Mama Ellie said you were too stubborn to die, and they were right." He says it all in one breath, the way children do, and Theodosius's eyes crinkle with silent laughter despite the pain. "Your papa needs rest," Rosalind says gently. "But you can stay with him if you're quiet. Can you be quiet?" Edmund nods solemnly and settles back down at the foot of the bed, one small hand resting on his father's ankle, anchoring him there. "I'll leave you with your family, Alpha," Elspeth says quietly, starting to withdraw. But Theodosius shakes his head and reaches out a hand toward her. When she approaches, confused, he takes her hand and places it on top of Rosalind's hand on top of his own. The three of them link together. Alpha, Luna, and Omega. Family in ways that pack law is still struggling to define. "We survived this together," Rosalind says quietly, understanding what Theodosius is trying to say. "All of us. We're all part of this family now, in whatever strange new form that takes." They stay like that for a long moment, three adults and one child, bound together by blood and law and love and choices that defied 3 centuries of tradition. 6 months after the challenge, Shadowcrest Manor is transformed. The pack is stronger than ever. Several smaller packs have asked to merge with Shadowcrest, drawn by its reputation for progressive thinking and strong leadership. The northern territories are still divided, but the division is less angry now, more philosophical. Edmund is thriving. He's 4 winters old now, confident and kind and showing early signs of alpha strength balanced with genuine empathy. He calls Rosalind Mama and Elspeth Mama Ellie, and doesn't see anything strange about having 2 mothers who love him in different ways. Rosalind has changed too. She still carries herself like a Luna. That training runs too deep to ever completely erase, but there's warmth in her now. She comes to the kitchen sometimes to bake with Edmund and Elspeth. She's learned all the lullabies. She holds Edmund when he cries and doesn't worry that it makes him weak. She and Elspeth have become something like friends, bonded by their shared love for Edmund and their shared determination to raise him well. Theodosius's throat healed, though his voice is rougher now, scarred. Some nights it pains him. But he wears the scars proudly, a reminder that he fought for his family and won. The soul bond tradition has spread. 7 other packs in the Northern Territories have invoked soul bond rights for various reasons. One Alpha bonded an Omega healer to his daughter, who was born with a chronic illness. Another Luna bonded a Beta teacher to her son, who showed unusual academic gifts. The tradition is being used in ways nobody expected, creating new family structures that the old laws never imagined. It's not perfect. There are still packs that condemn Shadowcrest, still Alphas who believe that Theodosius's victory was a fluke, still traditionalists who insist that one day the old ways will return. But for now, in Shadowcrest Manor, on a quiet evening when the moon is rising over the Northern Territories, you might find Alpha Theodosius reading ancient pack law to Edmund, teaching him about history and tradition and why rules matter. And in the next room, you might find Lady Rosalind and Omega Elspeth working together on a new tapestry for Edmund's chambers, their heads bent close together, planning and laughing and building something neither of them could have built alone. And Edmund moves between them freely, loved by all, belonging to all, proof that families can be built in ways that no law anticipated. But not everyone is pleased with this new order. In the eastern Rockfall territories, far from Shadowcrest, another Alpha is watching and waiting. Alpha Reginald Thornfield, Yes, Thornfield, Elspeth's distant cousin, head of the family she was exiled from when she was orphaned at 16, has heard about the Omega who rose above her station. He has heard about soul bonds and progressive pacts and alphas who choose love over tradition. And he has plans. Plans that involve reclaiming a wayward family member. Plans that involve proving that Omegas who forget their place need to be reminded of it. Plans that involve a different kind of challenge. Not combat but law. Ancient family law that says an Omega belongs first to her bloodline, not to any pack she serves. Reginald Thornfield is coming to Shadowcrest. And he's bringing with him a law that even Theodosius's victory and challenge can't defeat. The law of blood debt. Because 15 years ago, Elspeth's father owed Reginald a significant debt. When he died without paying it, that debt transferred to his only child, to Elspeth. And Reginald has decided it's time to collect. The letter arrives on a cold winter morning, sealed with a Thornfield family crest, a twisted thorn wrapped around a crown. Elspeth opens it in the kitchen, alone, while she's preparing breakfast for the household. She reads it once, 3 times. Then she sits down heavily on the floor, the letter falling from her shaking hands. That's where Rosalind finds her 20 minutes later, still sitting, still staring at nothing. Elspeth, Rosalind says, concerned, kneeling beside her. What's wrong? What's happened? Elspeth picks up the letter with trembling fingers and hands it to Rosalind. Rosalind reads it, and her face goes absolutely white. No, she breathes. No, this can't be legal. Blood debt was outlawed decades ago. They can't, he can't. He can, Elspeth says hollowly. Blood debt law was never formally abolished. Just fell out of use. Like soul bonds. But if he invokes it, if he has proof of the original debt, then you belong to him, Rosalind finishes, horrified. You belong to the Thornfield pack. And any bonds you've made supersede that. Are void, Elspeth confirms. My soul bond to Edmund. My position in Shadowcrest. All of it. Void. They stare at each other in horror as the implications sink in. Reginald Thornfield is coming to claim his blood debt. And when he does, he'll take Elspeth away from Shadowcrest, away from Edmund, away from everything and everyone she's built a life around. The soul bond will be broken. And this time there's no challenge that can stop it. Because this isn't about pack hierarchy or traditions or fighting for principles. This is about an ancient law that says blood comes before everything. Even love. Especially love. The letter specifies that Reginald will arrive in 3 days to formally claim his debt before the High Council. 3 days until Elspeth loses everything. 3 days until Edmund loses the mother who actually loves him. 3 days until everything Theodosius fought for, everything he nearly died for, everything he changed about pack culture. All of it could be undone by a law even older than soul bonds. Rosalind helps Elspeth to her feet. We tell Theodosius, she says firmly. Now, we don't hide this. We don't try to handle it alone. We face it together. But even as she says it, both women know the truth. Together or alone, there may be no way to stop what's coming. Blood debt is absolute. And Elspeth's blood belongs to Reginald Thornfield. When Theodosius reads the letter, his face goes through several expressions. Shock, fury, calculation, and finally, grim determination. There has to be a way around this, he says, pacing his study. Some legal precedent, some technicality, some. There isn't, Lord Cedric says heavily. He's arrived within the hour, summoned by urgent message. Blood debt is one of the oldest laws we have. Older than pack formation. Older than alpha hierarchy. Predates everything. If Reginald can prove the debt existed and was never paid, then Elspeth belongs to him, Theodosius finishes bitterly. As surely as if she were his property. The soul bond, Rosalind starts desperately, can be challenged by blood law, Lord Cedric says gently. Blood comes before bonds. Always has. It's why bloodlines matter so much in pack culture. It's why royal families guard their lineages so carefully. So we're just supposed to let him take her? Theodosius demands. After everything we've built. After everything we fought for. I don't know, Lord Cedric admits. And it's the first time anyone has ever heard him say those words. I truly don't know. Edmund appears in the doorway of the study. He's supposed to be in lessons, but somehow he's escaped and found his way here, drawn by the tension in the manor. Why is everyone sad? He asks in his small voice. The adults exchange looks. How do you tell a 4-year-old that the mother he loves might be taken away by ancient law? Elspeth kneels down to his level. Edmund, sweetheart, something difficult is happening. A man is coming. He's family to me, distant family. And he says I owe him something very old from before you were born. And if he's right, I might have to go away with him. Edmund's face crumples. No, he says flatly. You're my mama Ellie. Not his. Mine. I know, sweetheart, but. No. Edmund stamps his small foot, and there's alpha power in it, the first real showing of his inherited strength. You belong here. But me. Papa made it legal. He fought the mean alpha and won. You're supposed to stay forever. Edmund. Theodosius starts. But Edmund whirls on his father, and there are tears streaming down his face. You promised, he says, and his voice is breaking. When I let go of Mama Ellie that first night, you promised she wouldn't be hurt. You promised she'd be safe. You promised. The accusation hangs in the air like a blade. Theodosius opens his mouth, closes it, because what can he say? He did promise. And now that promise is about to be broken by a law he can't fight. Edmund runs from the room, sobbing. Elspeth moves to follow him, but Rosalind stops her. Let me, she says quietly. You've carried enough today. She finds Edmund in his chambers, curled up on his bed, crying into his pillow with the heartbroken sobs of a child whose world is ending. Rosalind sits on the edge of the bed and pulls him into her arms. For once, he doesn't stiffen or tolerate her embrace. He clings to her desperately, the way he used to cling to Elspeth. Mama! He sobs into her shoulder. Mama, don't let them take Mama Ellie. Please. Please don't let them. And Rosalind, Luna-trained royal bred, taught her entire life to value law over emotion, makes a decision. I won't, she says fiercely. I promise you, Edmund. I will not let that man take Elspeth from us. Not without fighting with everything I have. It's a promise she has no authority to make. A promise that might be impossible to keep. But she makes it anyway. Because somewhere in the past year, she's learned that sometimes the promises you can't keep are the ones most worth making. Sometimes love means fighting battles you know you'll lose. Sometimes being a mother means promising your child the impossible and then burning down the world trying to make it true. The story continues. But that's where we must stop for now. Because in 3 days, Reginald Thornfield will arrive at Shadowcrest Manor. In 3 days, the High Council will convene to hear his claim. In 3 days, Elspeth Thornfield, Omega, soul bond, the mother Edmund actually chose, will either stay with the family who loves her, or be dragged away to pay a debt she never agreed to, by a cousin who sees her as property, under a law so ancient that even challenging it might destroy everything Theodosius built. Will Theodosius find a legal way to break blood debt? Will Rosalind keep her impossible promise to Edmund? Will the High Council rule that love matters more than blood? Or will they uphold the oldest law of all? And what will Reginald Thornfield do when he arrives and discovers that the Omega he's come to claim has become the center of a political revolution that's changing pack culture forever? The answers wait in those 3 days. 3 days that will determine whether families can be chosen or only inherited. 3 days that will test whether the bonds we make matter more than the blood we're born with. 3 days until everything changes again. The cliffhanger is set. The stakes couldn't be higher. And the Northern Territories hold their breath,